Designed to help you fall asleep. On Snoozecast, we read excerpts from public domain works and, occasionally, original stories. Find us on snoozecast.com and follow us on social media and wherever you listen to podcasts. We'd like to thank our listeners, and we're so glad to help you fall asleep easier. If you enjoy our show, please write us a review on Apple Podcasts app or iTunes, even if that isn't how you listen to us, because it's the best way to help others find us. Also, share it with a friend. This episode is brought to you by Waking Up Early to Explore. Tonight, we'll be reading from Butterflies Worth Knowing by Clarence Moores Weed in 1926. Weed was a New England-based naturalist. He was the author or co-author of more than 20 books, many of them on insect pests and insect-plant relationships. Let's get cozy. Close your eyes. Relax your body into the softness of your bed. Now, take a few deep breaths. Butterflies Worth Knowing. Part 1. Introduction. In popular esteem, the butterflies among the insects are what the birds are among the higher animals, the most attractive and beautiful members of the great group to which they belong. They are primarily day flyers and are remarkable for the delicacy and beauty of their membranous wings, covered with tiny scales that overlap one another like the shingles on a house and show an infinite variety of hue through the coloring of the scales and their arrangement upon the translucent membrane running between the wing veins. It is this characteristic structure of the wings that gives to the great order of butterflies and moths its name, Lepidoptera, meaning scale-winged. In the general structure of the body, the butterflies resemble other insects. There are 3 chief divisions: head, thorax, and abdomen. The head bears the principal sense organs, the thorax, the organs of locomotion, and the abdomen, the organs of reproduction. By examining a butterfly's head through a lens, it is easy to see the principal appendages which it bears. Projecting forward from the middle of the top is a pair of long feelers of antennae. The abdomen is composed of 8 or 9 distinct rings or segments, most of which have 2 spiracles or breathing pores, one on each side. It also bears upon the end of the body of the female or the clasping organs of the male. The butterflies furnish the best known examples of insect transformations. The change from the egg to the caterpillar or larva, from the caterpillar to the pupa or chrysalis, and from the chrysalis to the butterfly, is doubtless the most generally known fact concerning the life histories of insects. It is a typical example of what are called complete transformations, as distinguished from the manner of growth of grasshoppers, crickets, and many other insects in which the young that hatches from the egg bears a general resemblance to the adult, and in which there is no quiet chrysalis stage when the little creature is unable to eat or to move about. Caterpillars are like snakes in at least one respect. In order to provide for their increase in size, they shed their skins. When a caterpillar hatches from the egg, it is a tiny creature with a soft skin over most of its body, but with rather a firm covering for its head. While we might fancy that there could be a considerable increase in size provided for by the stretching of the soft skin, it is easy to see that the hard covering of the head will not admit of this. So the story of the growth of a caterpillar may be told in this way. A butterfly lays an egg upon a leaf. Some days later, the egg hatches into a larva, which is the technical name for the second stage of an insect's life. In the case of the butterfly, we call this larva a caterpillar. The little caterpillar is likely to take its first meal by eating the empty eggshell. This is a curious habit, and a really satisfactory explanation of it seems not to have been made. Its next meal is likely to be taken from the green tissues of the leaf, commonly the green outer surface only being eaten at this time. The future meals are also taken from the leaf, more and more being eaten as the larva gets older. After a few days of this feeding upon the leaf tissues, the little caterpillar becomes so crowded within the skin with which it was born that it is necessary to have a larger one. So a new skin begins to form beneath the first one. Consequently, the latter splits open in a straight line, partway down the middle of the back, just behind the head. Then the new head covering is withdrawn from the old one, and the caterpillar wriggles its way out of the split skin and finds itself clothed in a new one. At first, all of the tissues of the new skin are soft and pliable, and they easily take on a larger size as the body of the caterpillar expands. A little later, these tissues become hardened and no further expansion is possible. This process of skin shedding is called molting. The cast skin is often called the exuvate. The period of the caterpillar's life between the hatching from the egg and this molt is often called a stage or instar. That is, the caterpillar up to the time of this molt is living in the first caterpillar stage or instar. During the actual molting, the caterpillar is quite active in freeing itself from the excuvate. But as soon as it is free, it is likely to rest quietly for some hours while the tissues of the new skin are hardening. Then it begins feeding upon the leaf again and continues taking its meals at more or less regular intervals for several days. By that time, it will again have reached its limit of growth within the second skin, and the process of molting must be repeated. It takes place in the same way as before, and the caterpillar enters upon the third instar of its larval life. This process of feeding and molting is continued for several weeks, the number of molts being usually 4. During the later stages, the increase in size is more marked each time the skin is shed, until the caterpillar finally reaches its full growth as a larva and is ready for the wonderful change to the quiet chrysalis, in which all its caterpillar organs are to be transformed into the very different organs of the butterfly. In the case of butterfly larvae, one of the most interesting features of the growth of the caterpillar is that of the remarkable changes in colors and patterns of marking which the caterpillar undergoes. One who had not followed these changes would often be at a loss to recognize caterpillars of slightly differing sizes as belonging to the same species. These changes commonly show a remarkable adaptation to the conditions of life, and generally tend to the concealment of the caterpillar upon its food plant. The stages of growth of the green clouded swallowtail caterpillar are illustrated on plate opposite page 80. Before each molt, the caterpillar is likely to spin a silken web upon the leaf surface. It then entangles its claws in the web to hold itself in place while the skin is cast. A week or 10 days after the last molt of its caterpillar growth, the larva commonly becomes full-fed and ready to change to the chrysalis state. The details of the way in which this is accomplished vary greatly with different butterflies, as will be noted in the stories of many species later in this book. In general, however, the caterpillar provides a web of silk, which it spins against some surface where the chrysalis will be secure in this web it entangles its hind legs. Sometimes there is the additional protection of a loop of silk over the front end of the body. After the legs have become entangled, the caterpillar hangs downward until the skin splits open along the median line of the back and gradually shrinks upward until it is almost free, showing as it comes off a curious creature which has some of the characteristic features of a chrysalis. It is seldom at this stage of the same shape as the chrysalis. When the caterpillar's skin is nearly off this chrysalis-like object, usually wriggles its body quickly in a manner to entangle a curious set of hooks attached to the upper end of the web of silken thread. This hook-like projection is called the cremaster, and it serves a very important purpose in holding the chrysalis in position. As soon as the cremaster is entangled in the web, the cast skin usually falls off, and for a very short period, the creature hanging seems to be neither caterpillar nor chrysalis. It is, in fact, in a transition stage between the two, and it very soon shortens up and takes on the definitive form of the chrysalis, the outer tissues hardening into the characteristic chrysalis skin. From the fact that this chrysalis skin shows many of the characteristic features of the future butterfly, it is evident that the change from the caterpillar to the butterfly really begin during the life of the larva. The nature of the process by which this change takes place has long been a puzzle to scientists. For the making of a butterfly is one of the most wonderful phenomena in the outer world, and it has challenged the attention of many acute observers. Some 2 centuries ago, the great Dutch naturalist Swammerdam studied very carefully the development of many insects, especially the butterfly. From these observations, he was led to believe that the process of growth was simply a process of unfolding. That is, as Professor Packard has expressed it, that the form of the larva, pupa, and imago pre-existed in the egg, and even in the ovary, and that the insects in these stages were distinct animals, contained one inside the other, like a nest of boxes, or a series of envelopes, one within the other. This was called the Encasement Theory, and it was held to be correct by naturalists for nearly a century. It was discredited, however, about 100 years ago. But not until another 50 years had passed was it definitely replaced by another and much more convincing theory propounded by Weismann. According to Weismann's theory, which is now well established, the process of development internally is a much more continuous one than the external changes would indicate. So far as the latter are concerned, we simply say that a caterpillar changes to a chrysalis and a chrysalis to a butterfly, the transition in each case requiring but a very short time internally. However, it has been going on almost continuously from the early life of the caterpillar. The various organs of the butterfly arise from certain germinal discs, or imaginal buds. The word imaginal, in this case, being an adjective form of imago, so that the imaginal buds are really simply buds for the starting of growth of the various organs of the imago or adult. As the caterpillars approach the chrysalis period, these imaginal buds rapidly develop into the various organs of the butterfly. This process is helped along by the breaking down of many of the tissues of the larva. This broken down tissue being then utilized for the production of the new organs. About the time the chrysalis is formed, this breaking down process becomes very general, so that the newly formed chrysalis seems largely a mass of creamy material, which is soon used to build up the various parts of the butterfly through the growth of the imaginal buds. There is probably no phenomenon in the world of living creatures which has attracted more attention than the change of the chrysalis into the butterfly. It is not strange that this is so. We see upon a tree or shrub or wall an inert, apparently lifeless object, having no definite form with which we can compare it with other things, having neither eyes, nor ears, nor wings, nor legs, an object apparently of as little interest as a lifeless piece of rock. A few minutes later, we behold it again, and note with astonishment that this apparently inanimate being has been suddenly transformed into the most ethereal of the creatures of earth, with an exquisite beauty that cannot fail to attract admiration. With wings of most delicate structure for flying through the air, with eyes of 1,000 facets, with organs of smell that baffle the ingenuity of man to explain, with vibrant antennae, and a slender tongue adapted to feeding upon the nectar of flowers. So it is not strange that this emergence of a butterfly has long been the theme both of poets and theologians, and that it attracts the admiring attention of childhood, youth, and age. Fortunately, this change from chrysalis to butterfly may readily be observed by anyone who will take a little trouble to rear the caterpillars or to watch chrysalids found outdoors. The precise method of eclosion, as we call this new kind of hatching, varies somewhat with different species, but in general the process is similar in all. Those chrysalids which have a light-colored outer skin are especially desirable if we would watch this process. One can see through the semi-transparent membrane the developing butterfly within, until finally, just before it is ready to break out, the markings of the wings and body show distinctly. If at this time the chrysalis is placed in the sunshine, it is likely to come out at once, so that you can observe it readily. It usually breaks apart over the head, and the newly released legs quickly grasp hold of the empty skin as well as of the support to which it is attached. It then hangs downward with a very large abdomen and with the wings more or less crumpled up, but decidedly larger than when they were confined within the chrysalis. The wings, however, soon begin to lengthen as they are stretched out, probably through the filling of the space by the body juices. Commonly, the hind pair of wings become full size before the front ones. In a short time, the wings attain their full size. The abdomen becomes smaller, and the butterfly is likely to walk a few steps to a better position where it will rest quietly for an hour or two while body wing tissues harden. After this, it is likely to fly away to lead the free life of a butterfly. These changes, from larva to chrysalis, and from chrysalis to adult, in the case of the monarch butterfly, are illustrated on the plates opposite pages 32 and 33. A little study of these photographs from life will help greatly to an understanding of the process. Some very interesting observations have been made by Mr. J. Alston Moffat upon the method of the expansion of the wings. In summarizing his investigations, he writes, "When a wing is fully expanded, and for an hour or two after, the membranes can be easily separated. Entrance for a pinpoint between them is to be found at the base of the wing, where the subcostal and median nerves come close together. The membranes are united at the costal and inner edges, which have to be cut to get them apart, but they are free at the outer angle. At that time, the nerves are in two parts, half in one membrane and half in the other, and open in the center. The fluid which has been stored enters the winglet at the opening referred to, expanding the membranes as it passes along between them, and the nerves at the same time. And when it has extended to every portion of the wing, then it is fully expanded. The expanding fluid is of a gummy consistency, and as it dries, cements the membranes together, also the edges of the half nerves, and produces the hollow tubes, with which we are so familiar, butterflies and moths. The butterflies and moths both belong to the great order of scale-winged insects. They are distinguished, however, by certain general characteristics, which hold true for the most part in both groups. The butterflies fly by day, the moths fly by night. All of the higher butterflies go into the chrysalis state without making a silken cocoon, while most of the higher moths make such a cocoon. The bodies of the butterflies are usually slender, while those of the larger moths are stout. The antennae of the butterflies are generally slender and commonly enlarged at the tip into a miniature club. The antennae of the larger moths are commonly feathery or are long and slender, tapering gradually toward the tip. The characteristic features that distinguish a moth from a butterfly are well illustrated on the plate opposite page 49, which shows one of the largest and most beautiful moths in the world. It is the Cynthia Moth. As may be seen, the newly emerged moth is resting upon the silken cocoon, in which it spends its period as a chrysalis. This cocoon was attached by the caterpillar to the twig from which it hangs at the time it spun the cocoon. The feathered antenna, the hairy legs, the thick thorax, and large abdomen all show very clearly in this side view of the moth. As will be seen, the wings are large and very suggestive of those of a butterfly and have the characteristic eye spots toward the tip and the crescent marks in the middle, which are so often found on the wings of the larger moths.